I got like $300 in Shiba.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta close up OBS and restart OBS.
You're good. Good old OBS.
Everybody loves
You know what I
sheep.
mean? Got up to 6.8. It's at 3.7 now.
You know, I think Doge and sheep are going to be around.
Louisiana chicken. Louisiana chicken.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the overall stock market.
Glass.
There's sectors. There's rotation out of sectors. There's rotation into sectors.
I ordered the number 3. It's a 3-piece with the fries and the lemonade. There's also Towns and Rite Aid too. The Rite Aid. Definitely go to Towns and Rite Aid. Do research. It's just what about food? Have you ever considered or been approached by the Wrap Snacks company? Here's some Wrap Snacks. Miss Toy, a rapper, was on the other snacks.
Cool.
She has her own Wrap Snacks. And the Big Timers had Wrap Snacks chips too. They sure as fucking did. They made them have their own chips, the Big Timers chips. They really did. They did. It's our cream deal. I don't remember the flavor, but they had their own Wrap Snacks. You're not lying. Keep on, rock.
Alright, so yeah, we can go whenever now.
Everybody warming up? Warming up?
Warming up.
So this is officially, this is the first ever crypto cast. This is our first crypto podcast.
Episode 0.
Yeah, layer 0. So yeah, just introduce yourself, you know, however.
Sure. I'm Bill Golembieski. Currently going to school at SU for computer science. Graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a pre-medicine and computer science degree in 2015. So moved back here to Syracuse after that and started a marketing company. I've kind of just been playing the man of many hats, both for my company and a few local companies, and just kind of kicking around and kind of networked my way into the position I am now. So here I am on a crypto podcast.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. So I just met you within, you know, it's been a week.
A week.
And so, and you came to just hang out while I interviewed Danny Vault, my cousin, owner of the York. And he told me that he was like, oh, I got a guy that's into crypto, and he told me you were coming, so I was glad. And then when you came in and you sat down, we immediately got into it about crypto. And I thought I was going to be smart and ask you like a couple of really obscure questions about crypto. I think I asked you whether you preferred ZK roll-ups or optimistic roll-ups, and everybody else just kind of like looked at us like we were crazy, but you know, you quickly just like handled that. So I knew right away that you were somebody that it was going to be fun to talk to about crypto, right? And so talk about your recent project, because you just wrote a paper.
Yeah, so kind of to roll back into college, I was looking at day trading and kind of doing all the research about that with stocks and securities and stuff like that. Figured out, you know, you need a minimum of $25,000 to actually day trade without fees. And so I was like, you know, what's the next best thing? And then there was this, you know, Bitcoin thing out there. And I started by writing down on a piece of paper, you know, when I would buy it and when I would sell it. And I started, you know, with a theoretical balance, like $1,000. I was taking like 21 credits at the time, so that kind of, you know, got thrown on the back burner. But I was doing that for about a month. Didn't do very well. I think Bitcoin was like $60 around then. And it was, at the time for me, it just seemed like a pain in the ass to set a wallet up and get all that going. And I was like, you know, what's this thing going to do? Is it going to go to zero? That's all the news was saying, and then here we are today. It's $50,000 or and change as of right now. But so that's kind of when it got on my radar, and then it kind of popped up again in 2016, 2017 when all the bad news was coming out about it. Silk Road, all the money being locked up in Ethereum smart contracts, that not being returned, kind of stuff like that. And then after that, just kept hearing about, all the crypto news, the buzz, all that kind of stuff, and it was very multi-level marketing for me. So I, washed my hands of it, said I wouldn't deal with it until recently. So we had to do a project for my master's program where we got to research kind of anything we wanted, and I decided to do crypto because I kept, hearing about it.
Wasn't going away.
Wasn't going away, and not only was I hearing about it, online and seeing ads at the not the Super Bowl, like in NFL games for crypto stuff, but a lot of people that I know and respect in the computer science world, peers and stuff like that, started talking about it. So I decided to do, a lot of research into it. So I had to write a 7-page research paper on crypto, and kind of saw a bunch of very interesting stuff. Kind of, I think right now as like a pivotal moment in crypto holding as an asset, but also as something that can do something. Smart contracts, all that stuff. So it's not only what I think is meme coins and all that stuff, but there's actually underlying technology there that can do interesting things. You have a problem and you apply a specific tool to the problem. Crypto is just another tool, right? So it's another hammer, it's another screwdriver that's available for you to use for specific problems, and it handles certain things very well and certain things it doesn't handle very well. So it's kind of up to you and us and me as a developer to figure out, is this the best tool for the job, and does it make sense? And that's kind of where I am right now, is figuring out, what's the best tool to get the job done, or are there multiple tools? And seeing what problems to apply them to, and looking at all the problem spaces there are right now, real estate, finance, the list goes on. And kind of seeing, is this tool a good application here? And then, is somebody developing that? Which token or which technology is going to be the best for this? And that's kind of what the paper dives into. And I came away with a couple good prospects as far as technology-wise, and I know I'm going to be watching this years and years from now, going, "Oh man, if you only if you only saw that one thing and it came out, not too long ago." But we'll see. But yeah, so that's kind of. I really didn't get into crypto until a week ago when I started to really dive into it and research it and stuff. So.
And you kind of found your way back because of the tech and the utility and the use case, right? Because originally the thing that you found so off-putting was just the marketing, right? Like it was just, there was a bunch of meme coins or, coins that were tantamount to me. They might as well all be, if there's not a definitive use case, they all might as well be characterized as meme coins, right?
Right.
And so talk about that, because that simplifies the conversation, because your background is you have a tech background, so you.
Right. So the underlying value of an asset is kind of what's assigned to it, right? And you have all these meme coins that are the underlying thing that's driving its price is demand, right? Sometimes not even supply. Sometimes there's an unlimited supply, like Dogecoin, for example.
Inflationary coins, yeah.
Right. And, I'm seeing, Dogecoin spike to almost $1 from where it was. And, to me, that stuff doesn't really make sense. So the investor in me, because I've been, doing options and securities trading for a while, that didn't really make much sense to me. So I kind of stay away from that. With options and security trading, you have to do your research and seeing, the underlying fundamentals of a company, cash flow statements, stuff like that. So kind of applying your due diligence research there to cryptocurrency just seemed like the natural thing to do. And with that, really the only thing that I see that has value is underlying technology and what it's going to be able to do to, further the future. Is it going to last? Are there people that support it? Are there foundations that support it?
I think it's gonna last because you have, the value of the dollar just continues to go down, and value of several world currencies continue to go down. As they hit the credit crunch, they produce more money, they print more money,
Mm-hmm.
Prices go up, and it just has a deflationary effect on crypto, where,
Yeah, it's definitely an instrument for storing assets, and that's
Yeah,
another
and-
use case for it that I personally haven't really considered. But you guys,
But you're sufficiently indoctrinated with the whole, hedge against inflation narrative and all that stuff, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
So like,
it's an asset class.
so
yeah.
that like, that's a given for you, right? So what do you think? I'm most interested in hearing about, which, and now that we've decided that there's good coins and bad coins, which of the good coins do you think are gonna be around,
Sure.
And then there's some that you mentioned to me last week that aren't even on the radar yet, that are probably waiting, for the next crypto winter to kind of like slowly roll out, rather than, just coming out during the end of a bull cycle and then just, retracing directly.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of do that, you have to look back at the, for me at least, look back at the history of the internet, right? So, internet started, World Wide Web started, at CERN, so the Large Hadron Super Collider, and they needed to share research with each other, other scientists around the globe. So they started as a server that had a bunch of links to other servers, and you could follow the links and get to the data you needed to and extract it, and that was kind of the startings of the web. I'd like to think of cryptocurrency as kind of the same thing. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. So you kind of have to look at how did things start over here, and kind of make the direct, not the direct correlation, but a correlation between what's going on and how that blew up and how this is blowing up. And further research, you can see that it's pretty much correlated along the same exponential growth pattern. So with that, I think you have Bitcoin staying around. That's your digital gold.
So, and where would you, so if you were gonna compare a crypto to, so the analogy is it's a good one, right? Like comparing crypto space to the advent of the internet, right? And so, so Bitcoin being the first, which is essentially the progenitor of blockchain, right?
Right. So you can
Popularized it.
think of Bitcoin as like the computer, right? It can't really do much by itself, right? It can. It has this cool blockchain technology that is immutable, and it has this basic technology, but it can't do anything. So that's kind of what with the internet, you had the computer, but it wasn't connected to anything yet. You know, there's your first layer.
So that's a really good comparison.
So now you're looking at, now you're starting to connect these computers, right? So, and the computers are able to do things. So now you're looking at technologies like Ethereum or Solana that now can do something with, and I'm referencing smart contracts.
And Ethereum is the progenitor of the smart contract.
Right. So now you have this cool technology that can do something. So you're essentially, if you're to use the same analogy, now you have the startings of the internet, right? You're able to connect things together and do work. And looking into the future, and I think that's where we are now, is we're starting to get into the connectivity phase of everything.
And so when we talk about Ethereum and Solana and others of that ilk, we're talking about layer ones.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So now you should start looking for, I think, the first Netscape, right? That's where I think we are. If you were to think of it in internet terms, we have the underlying technology basically done. We have the connections between them figured out, and now we have to start figuring out how are we going to be able to build upon that.
I think you're starting to see that a little bit with like the Cardano DEX, and you're seeing it with the ZK roll-up on Loopring, where you're able to do the dApps right through the wallet.
Right.
So
people are starting to do things, right? And
So
now it's up to you to.
And those are the layer twos, right?
Yep.
You build on Ethereum and Solano and Cardano, those are the layer twos. And for most people, they don't, and it's like we have the luxury in this moment during this podcast to decide like who our audience is, right?
Right.
And we could go in any direction, but I think that for the most basic person or a noob, right? All they know is Bitcoin.
Right.
They know Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it's it's hard to go out and do your research if you don't really know what you're looking at, and it just requires a lot of either in-depth investment by yourself to learn the fundamentals, or trust someone.
yeah, and there's
And what they're
several
saying.
different layers of investors. You have your noobs that are just Bitcoin, and then you have your mainstreamers that are into Ethereum, and they're not fully understanding the technology under it. They're just buying it because it's Ethereum.
Right.
And then they go to make a transfer, and they realize because it's high congestion that there's a $900 gas fee right now. They don't understand that if they wait till 3 in the morning, it might be $10.
Right.
But even that would be too high,
Right.
given what's out there. And I'm kind of approaching it like I'm almost separating like the investments from the technology,
Yeah.
because as far as the average person goes, like when they invest in a crypto, it's pure speculation. They don't care about the tech.
Right.
Yeah,
In
you
order-
And that's what I'm getting at is, you have these layer 2 solutions, and people aren't even equating the fact that these are going to allow them to get the Ethereum at like 20 cents.
Right.
But you would posit that forget Ethereum, right? Because there's just so many great free alternatives. You mentioned XRD to me last time.
Yeah. So when I was doing this paper, I was looking at the underlying technology. Stumbled upon Solana, which I really liked, and actually one of my old roommates, probably a year ago, was telling me about Solana, and he was all about it, and he was
Super
telling me all
early.
about Bitcoin when it was like like a couple of years ago. So it's
Well, if he
kind of
wa-
like, well, he has a good track record, so.
Did he, and if he was a Solana holder, then I mean he's probably a multimillionaire right now.
Yeah, he's actually he's from Syracuse.
Yeah.
His name's John Ganatas.
Okay.
So he started a company called Credit Card Insider with, I believe he partnered with Terrakeet in town here,
Mhm.
and I think they just sold that. So that's awesome for him, and he's just really diving into Solana development. We talk here and there.
So
about
he's an actual developer. He works for Solana.
So he's working on getting. He also does iOS development too. So he's working on getting his understanding of Solana up to par, because you have to write it in this really complicated language called Rust, at least
Yeah.
the smart contracts.
Right, we talked about that.
And
So as a Solana node operator, so is that required then? Is that, do you have to know Rust to be to run a validator node?
I don't think you have to know Rust to run a validator node. No, they have a package thing that if you throw it on the hardware and run it,
You just have to have the infrastructure and
Right.
and you gotta stake a certain amount and promise that you're gonna be there.
I don't even think you have to stake it.
No?
So you just run the hardware and people stake to your node, and
Okay, others are staking to your node.
yeah, I believe that's how it works. But yeah, the initial hardware cost is like $5,000 right now. But I mean, if you look at Moore's law, right? So transistor density is going to increase, double, right? And then so I think that Solana is actually looking forward to the future, because if it's so expensive now, in the future it's not going to be, right? So then
Smaller.
as it
faster.
goes on, yeah, smaller, faster. As time goes on, it'll actually be more affordable to run a node, and you'll see more and more come online.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, so Solana has definitely been the Ethereum of this cycle.
Definitely. You kind of have to look at the underlying technology to understand that. And like I said, that's, unless you have kind of a background in that, it's hard to, pick through.
It's so right, because I remember looking at Ethereum when it was $300, I'm like, how high is this gonna go? Now-
Right.
Now where are we,
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
More than 10.
And this was, Ethereum was was $90 in March of 2020. It's pushing
Yeah.
5,000 right now. So when you were comparing the layer twos, sounds like Cardano was the one that garnered most of your interest, but there are others that are promising as well, like Cardano, which has a huge community.
Yeah.
And huge fan base. What about Cardano?
So I think Cardano's great. The founder, I believe, BitTorrent, right?
It's Charles Hoskinson. He was one of the original devs of Ethereum.
Theorem, yeah. So
A lot of those guys
very,
came out of it.
very strong development team behind it. And that's, one thing you have to look at when, even doing security stuff, you got to look at who's the team behind it, right?
Yeah.
Is that a good team? Do they have good stewardship, right? The next valuable thing is how much support do they have from the community, right? There's this thing called Metcalfe's law, if you've ever heard of it. So
Yeah.
it's the value of a network,
Network effect, yeah.
right? So the value of a network is the square of how many nodes are in the network,
And that's why pi is called pi.
right?
Yeah.
So what that is, investors, more importantly, developers. If you don't have anyone developing that's on your network and on your platform, then you really don't have anywhere to go. And that's kind of where I see the scarcity here, right? So doing this paper, it's what's going to succeed is, well, where are the developers, right? Because you're going to have technologies come out of those, groups of developers, and that's what's actually going to, push and be the driving factor of, is this thing going to make it or is it not?
Mhm.
You're going to have, and you can even have things that seem like a good idea, like Cardano. We'll take that for an example. But if you brand it towards developers as like a TiVo, well, we all saw what happened there, right? So it could be this great technology, and it, could be the first DVR. But, if your marketing doesn't work and your support isn't there, then it's going to fail. So there's just so many things you have to take into consideration. And, that's, again, if you don't have the background, it's tough to sift through that and see. So I think from what I saw, they all have developers coming in mass, Cardano, Solana, Ethereum, obviously. I think that Ethereum's going to be around, Bitcoin's going to be around, Solana's probably going to be around, and then you'll start seeing solutions built upon that. And then if you need a specific tweak to the tool to make it run a little bit faster, then you're going to see something else. You're going to see, Radix, for example, which is what I was talking about. Depending on what you need. Do you need
And
the
talk about
robustness?
Radix, because you said that's not even like pure blockchain, right?
Yeah, so it's distributed ledger. So it's really cool. They've tested over 1 million transactions per second. Solana, when that went down,
And like explain that, because that's something that comes up a lot, right? Like transactions per second. So this, just talk about the whole scalability issue and why Ethereum is so expensive and how these really fast products are a great solution.
yeah, so right now Ethereum's proof of work as of today. I think they're forking soon, or maybe they have. I don't really follow Ethereum too
Yeah, not
closely.
yet, but once that sharding
Yeah,
plays out sometime next year, then they'll officially be ETH 2.0.
yeah. So ETH 2.0 is coming out, which is going to be proof of stake, right? So there's this big
And,
push.
and just, if you would, just like break down, do a quick developer's perspective explanation of proof of work and proof of stake.
Sure, yeah. Proof of work, so that came about, I forget the year, but it was to discourage spam emails. So you'd have to do some work in order to deliver this email, and that would prevent, mass spam emails, because you'd have a lot of work on these servers and you'd have to pay for it, and, that would just be expensive
So
for
this,
people to spam.
this is before Bitcoin. This
Right,
is just-
so that's the starting of pre-Bitcoin, that's what proof of work was designed for. It was actually just spam emails. Could use that for spam phone calls now. But so, you do this computationally expensive work, and if you match this hash, then you're able to, get a block reward for that and add to the blockchain. Proof of stake, there's many different kinds, but a general overview of it, proof of stake, is you have these validators, and you stake to the validators, and then one of them is chosen at random, sometimes pseudo-randomly, depending on how much there's at stake. There's time of stake, there's how much there's stake, there's multiple hybrids of that. But one is chosen to, based on the algorithm, to validate the block, then you get the block reward. And because it's chosen at random, there's a lot less work than having to prove a hash, right? So everyone's kind of moving towards proof of stake because it's more environmentally friendly. You kind of get the same secureness, right? And then you still have, it being decentralized, depending on your algorithm. But
So do you have an opinion about the security? I mean, is proof of work more secure, or is proof of stake more as secure?
Yeah, I would say it's all a game of decentralization, and there's the different attacks that you can have. Proof of work has its own attacks. Proof of stake has its own attacks. Majority attacks, 51% attacks. Stuff like that. I think that security using any of the blockchain technologies is, I think it's good enough.
Mhm.
And so I'm doing my master's in computer science, and I'm doing some cybersecurity classes, and really in information assurance. So really what you have to do is, kind of look at what's my actual risk, right? And then apply an appropriate level of security to that risk. You want to minimize your attack surface on something. So if you have this really secure thing that you want, hidden away, you want to minimize the attack surface. But if you have something that, you really don't care about, privacy, if you're using it as like a transfer of assets and you really don't care, then why do you want to use maximum security there, right?
Right.
So it's going to be like you'd want like a blend, right? You want your most secure stuff with the most secure algorithm, most secure blockchain, privacy, like Monero, stuff like that. And then you have, I just want to transfer $1 to my friend. What do I really care who sees that? You see that on Venmo, like
Sure.
you can make it public, private, stuff like that. So it's the right tool for the job.
So the trilemma, right? Like BNB is supposedly just a clone of Ethereum with a larger block size.
Mm-hmm.
So like how I mean, I guess you already answered that question, because it really comes down to like how important is the transaction. You're going to apply the necessary amount of security accordingly, right?
Right.
Because you hear about the trilemma, scalability, security, and decentralization.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your feelings about that? I mean, are they making too much of it? Is it ultimately a trade-off?
Yeah, so I mean, you have your trilemma, and everyone's trying to be the best at all of them, right? And they're going to come to find out that there's no best at all of them. This is like a computer architecture thing, right? You can't be fast, secure, reliable, or whatever it's going to be. You have to choose, right? There's trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs. You can't have the best of everything, and that's going to be. You got to figure out what your problem is, and figure out what you actually value and what you want. And there's always going to be a faster solution, right? So if you take right now, you take this generalized, like an Ethereum, right? And you apply it towards something that needs to be really fast. Maybe it doesn't need to be so secure. Maybe, it doesn't need to be so scalable. Will it work? Sure. But there's going to be a better solution, right? So, I just think that everyone's trying to find the perfect thing that checks all the boxes, but they're looking wrong. So it's got to be, what's the problem case? What does it solve? And which way are you going to skew on that?
So do you think that's going to emerge on a native blockchain, or is that where, layer 3 in interoperability is going to become valuable, because you can pick and choose tools from, different blockchains?
Yeah, so, just being able to connect different blockchains is going to be huge, right? Because they're each going to have their own, positives and negatives. Radix, which is what I was researching, is an all-new level 1, which is also crazy to think about. Maybe there's going to be more level 1s coming out.
Mm-hmm.
They've been developing it since 2013, and they just came out with their mainnet. So I'm super interested to get on developing with them. I'm also very interested in developing with Solana, also with Ethereum, because once you get those core concepts, then you can evaluate, the state of crypto as far as like a tool chain, right?
How much better do you think the tech is on Solana than, say, Cardano? Or are they so close that it just comes down to all that VC money that's getting poured into Solana and all the marketing?
So I think they're doing, so I like Solana a little bit better. So Cardano, I believe, I haven't done too much research on it, but it's meant to be like bank-to-bank transactions, right? So there's I forget what not the protocol. There's like a standard that they're trying to adhere to. That's the specific standard for bank-to-bank transactions. It has to follow this specific thing, and they're soon looking to be certified for that. So then that'll allow, you know, a Chase to transfer to Wells Fargo with, you know, that, and that'll be huge. Solana, right? So they have their smart contracts going. You have all that VC money. You have all the marketing, which I think is huge. You know, not only because that's what I do, but again, the value of the network is how many nodes you have in it. Nodes being developers and VC, and you know, you have all the marketing, and you're attracting more nodes into your network. And then, you know, look at Facebook or Amazon or Google. You know, you have all these users. It's going to have this value, and people are going to go there because it has this value. So Solana's doing a good job of that. With Radix, which is what I'm looking at, I've yet to see, you know, marketing or anything on that. Kind of stumbled across it. I think I was looking on like Twitter or YouTube or something, and someone mentioned something, went and saw their technology. Thought it was pretty cool. So we'll see how that does. But yeah, I would say, you know, again, they're all going to have their applications.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think the marketing is like a big factor, because most people, they just want to be, they want to give their mind share away to whoever's paying the most for, like, you know, the naming rights of the Miami Heat or, you know, the Staples Center.
yeah,
And they see that, and that's confirmation and validation that the product must be good, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, also you have you know, the herd mentality. You know, a group of people is never going to be wrong because they're
You
never
also
going to admit
have
it.
the whole mainstream concept that you can now just put a brand on something that's just an exchange of money and nothing else, you know?
Right.
You know?
You know that Crypto.com bought Staples
Staples
Center,
Center, yeah, exactly.
like
It's crazy.
500 million,
They
or
also,
some
they also
more.
have like Matt Damon as the spokesman now.
I saw that, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and they they recently, there was a court ruling about the founder of Bitcoin.
Oh, I saw that. Like, so, but he's not really Satoshi Nakamoto, right? What's that story? I saw the headlines. When you look at crypto news, every outlet will cover the same story. So it'll just be like a ribbon of the same story. You know, Forbes and Cointelegraph and right down the line. You know,
Right.
So do you know that?
Yeah, so
What's
I
going
kind of looked at it before this, just as like something cool to talk about.
So talk about, for people that are really outside of crypto, who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and
Sure. So, 2008, right?
Yeah.
There was the Bitcoin white paper that was released. So that was essentially the introduction of, hey, world, this is what Bitcoin is, and nobody knows who wrote it because it was released under a pseudonym. And in 2018, there was a battle of, where was it? It was Australia, I think it was. So there was a guy in London, I believe it was London, and there was a guy in Australia. And they met on a computer forum in 2003. One of them was doing, he was part of a whole bunch of different organizations, stuff that makes sense. There was like a cryptography organization. There was an organization that dealt with like national security stuff, networking stuff. I don't know them off the top of my head, but so there was a guy with the idea, and then there was the guy who was executing. So the guy with the idea, his name was Craig. The guy who was kind of the coder, developer, from what I understand, was this guy David. And so David was disabled, I think, so he was like in a wheelchair. He was like a veteran, I think. Disclaimer, I read the court documents, you know, earlier today. I'm just recalling all this,
Sure,
so
yeah.
could be wrong. So they were both So Craig wrote this white paper that might have been the Bitcoin white paper, and he produced emails saying, hey, I have this paper and I would like you to review it. And then shortly after that, the Bitcoin white paper was released. So, all signs point towards, that was actually it. It was released. Both of them started mining, and they have wallet addresses and transactions to prove it. They sent each other a transaction. That was part of the court documents. And so the whole thing was David ended up passing away, and his family, the estate of David, wanted half the Bitcoin because they felt that it was his. And Craig was like, oh, no. He was part of this company. It's the company's, and I own the company, so it's all mine. And recently, a couple days ago, he won that. So he gets to keep all of the Bitcoin. I don't think it was ever proven that he has it. So
It may or may not exist.
Right.
So he's off the hook.
But he's off the hook from having to pay, billions of dollars, potentially. So, just reading through the court documents, which you can find publicly online, which is what I highly recommend everybody do. Go form an opinion for yourself. That's, I'm all about that.
So do you think this guy is really Satoshi Nakamoto?
From what I've seen, yeah.
Really?
Just from
Wow.
looking at the court documents and, this guy's background, I think that both of them together, worked on it. So they both released this.
You'd
white
never
paper.
guess that from the way they frame it in the news.
Right.
They just kind of like, because that's like a really big revelation.
Yeah. And, so seeing that, I was like, oh man, what does this mean for crypto? We found the creator of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We now know has a shit ton of Bitcoin, right? What's that going to look like for the market,
Yeah,
right? Because he could just dump it all.
sure.
Luckily,
He still has it.
if he still has it, right? So this is the whole disclaimer of if he still has it and if he is who he says he is. But so doing some research on him, he is the CEO of some crypto firm in London,
Mhm.
and he also has a bunch of patents on technology related to blockchain. So
Huh.
to me, it's saying, hey, he's not going to dump it because that's literally his life.
Sure.
And why would you make the digital gold crash and everything else follows it? Right. So I think,
Especially since the ethos of Bitcoin is to hodl and, it's a store of value.
Right.
Now.
right.
Because
So,
originally it was a peer-to-peer cash system, right? It was never meant to be a store of value.
yeah. And there's a bunch of emails in the court documents that, between them, it's just really cool to see, potentially the birthing of Bitcoin behind the
That's
scenes.
amazing because when I read those headlines, I was like, oh, this guy's just a joker. It's almost framed that way.
Yeah.
Because that, again, it's a really big deal to know that, Satoshi Nakamoto exists.
Yeah. I mean,
Who he is.
definitely exists, right?
Well, I mean, everybody,
Or
like, the
group-
popular opinion is that he's dead,
right.
or one of the more popular opinions.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
wild.
it's I think it's read the documents and figure out for yourself. But
So it's just like this average dude named Craig,
yeah,
I mean,
it's like
or something like
Craig
that,
something, yeah.
I mean, and you, in your mind, like, because Satoshi Nakamoto,
Well, nobody would have bought into Bitcoin by Craig, Satoshi was much more mysterious.
no
and-
question. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was smart in that right.
Right, because then you can't judge how intelligent he is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm clearly judging him based on his name.
Right. Yeah, let me try and pull that up. Yeah, Miami jury rules in favor of Craig Wright. There we go. So he's an Australian computer scientist. So I thought that was really interesting, so I was like, okay, well, if the headline, the headline, CNBC, Miami jury rules in favor of Craig Wright, who claimed to invent Bitcoin.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Excuse me. You gotta like it, John. So that's an interesting idea, right? Bitcoin was invented as a peer-to-peer cash system.
Mhm.
And then at some point, it was decided that it just didn't scale. It didn't make sense, right, to be medium of exchange. So at some point it becomes, it assumes this store of value narrative, right? And in a very short period of time, whole corporations have changed their model in pursuit of accumulating massive amounts of Bitcoin. It's kind of a stunning turn of events.
Yeah, I mean, you get the popularity into it, and all of a sudden it has value. I mean, you can equate that to, if you look at Instagram today, people who have hundreds of or millions of followers on Instagram, all of a sudden they post and they can post.
So that's Metcalfe's law.
Right. Metcalfe's law. The value of your network is who participates in it, right? So you also have to look at this one thing, this one theory. It's called Eigenvector Centrality Theorem. You ever heard of that?
What's it called?
It's called Eigenvector Centrality Theorem. So what that is your value of the network on Metcalfe's law is, the value of your network increases to the square of how many nodes are in the network, nodes being people, stuff like that. Eigenvector Centrality Theorem is, well, okay, you have all these nodes, but what's the importance of one of those nodes? How do you measure that? So the popular theory was how well connected is it, right? How many nodes is it connected to? And this comes into telecommunications. So we're kind of getting back to where we started, where the web came from, right? So
Which is where Metcalfe's law was originally applied, right?
right. So they actually use Eigenvector Centrality Theorem, Facebook and Instagram, and that's how they figure out, people you might know, stuff like that. It's scarily accurate sometimes,
Yeah.
right? But all it is it's saying the value of a node is not only how many nodes is it connected to, but what are the value of those nodes, right? So you could have, Bob, we'll use a classic computer science analogy. You have Bob and Alice, right? Bob is connected to, a couple people around Syracuse or a couple people, in Wyoming. And then you have Alice, who's also only connected to a couple people. But, Alice is connected to, Tim Cook and Donald Trump and, other popular celebrities. Using those two things, Bob might have more connections, but Alice is going to be more valuable because of the connections that Alice has, right? And then you can see based on that, Alice is connected to this person who's connected to here, and this is also another big, name, we'll say, has a lot of value. Alice, you might know this person, Facebook, right? Or Google does that for, when you search something in Google, there's this whole industry called SEO, right? Search engine optimization, that a website's value is based on not only, this isn't the entirety of the value, but a lot of it's weighted on who links to that website. If you have a website that's talking about crypto, for example, but it's newly published and no one really links to it, doesn't have a lot of users, doesn't have a lot of flow to it, that's not going to be as valuable as something, we'll say, that's connected to, or not connected to, but mentioned and linked in CNBC, right? So that whole theory is Eigenvector Centrality Theorem, right? So we need to apply that. So this is like next step thinking. Right now we're thinking it's just Metcalfe's law, and you know, Solana just has a lot of developers and a lot of VC, right? But we got to think of it as, okay, it has a lot, but who's it connected to, right? Or
So there's a quality component.
right, so there's a quality component that's I believe is the next step, right? So you have Netscape, right? That started, no longer a thing, right? You have Napster, or you have Spotify, right? So you got to start looking at, you know, not only at a snapshot in time right now, who's in it, who's invested, but what's coming up and who's part of that, right? So you got to look for, you know, right now, like I said, the web as in cryptocurrency is just being built. You're gonna have to figure out who's the Napster right now. You're gonna have to figure out who's the Ask Jeeves right now, right? Because Google isn't built yet, Amazon's not built yet, but you got to figure out, okay, this technology or this one specific application is very unique and it has a lot of potential, and then you use that model, and you can, using that model, filter out the next step after that, the Amazons, the Googles, right? So you have this really cool application of technology. How are you maximizing that, right? So there's like 2 steps you have here. So that's what's really exciting about crypto is like it's like the reinvention of the internet, I think, but in a different application. It's just it's the fastest accepted technology in all of history by like 2 times. So to figure out where it's going, you got to kind of look back at history, and I think, you know, the web is a very good way to do that. There's a very good there's a good quote floating around that I really like, and it really drove me to kind of do this research on technology and why I'm so into technology versus the asset part of it. Is the people who made money during the gold rush weren't the people who found the gold, it was the people selling the shovels.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out what's the shovel, what's going to be the best tool. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm not distracted with all the, you know, gold over here, gold over here.
I feel like right now you're looking at the layer 2 solutions and Web 3.0 tokens are those are your shovels, you know.
Yeah, or, you know, something completely new. You don't know yet.
Right.
Sure. Well, it's always going to be evolving, you know.
Right.
Netscape died, but the code became Firefox.
Right.
You know.
So we're at the very, you know, early beginnings of what this is going to be.
We're
and
so
it's
early.
Super interesting.
And the people that are just speculating, their question is like, you know, when moon, right? They don't care about the ethos or the history and how rapidly this is being adopted.
Look at how like certain coins start as a meme, and then because of their popularity, they end up becoming a technology behind it, like, you know, like Doge, you know, or some of the side coins that are running under.
Yeah,
Doge, you know.
yeah. I mean, there was a lot of so Doge has been around for a long time, right?
Yeah, so it's a spin-off of Litecoin,
Litecoin.
which is a spin-off of Bitcoin, right? So,
And Mark Cuban was really supportive of Doge, right? Because he thought that it would be a really good medium of exchange. And then there's another law, Gresham's law. Do you know about that one?
no.
And it's an old, like 17th century law that maintains that bad money will drive out good. And if you have, say, crummy fiat or gold, you know, which one are you gonna spend on goods and services, right? You're gonna spend the fiat because you're not gonna give up your store of value.
Right.
And so for that reason, Mark Cuban thought that Doge would be really good for, you know, that people would be willing to spend it on basketball tickets and, you know, snacks and things like that.
Yeah, and you know, it's also kind of a marketing ploy too, right? Because you had Doge was taking off at that point, and you know, Mark Cuban's throwing hashtag Doge on everything, you know, all of a sudden, everyone who's supporting Doge, he kind of, you know, not, well, commandeered almost the marketing of and trendingness of Doge and kind of redirected it. And now he's like, oh, well, you know, I have this status, right? I'm this high value node, and now I'm going to connect into Doge. Now Doge is going to have this high value. Now everybody's going to want to also connect, and then that's free marketing, right? Now everyone's going to want to get tickets, and you know, everyone's going to want to pay for Doge with this because, you know, they can, right? So I think he kind of, and he was also like, you know, I hold Doge, so I want it to blow up.
Sure.
And it's not a security, so I'm not going to get in trouble with the SEC. So why not pump it, right? Because he's not going to get in trouble.
Right. So there's, I want to ask you about XRP, but I want to go back. I want to talk about Facebook, and what do you think about, you know, their branding move to meta platforms and metaverse in general?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and I also think that, you know, that was inevitably the way of the future. There are people who work there that are way, way, way smarter than I, and you know, whole groups of people that are way smarter than I, and they have, you know, theorists and you know, unlimited money almost. You know, that's, you know, they have all the PhD and research and all that stuff is behind, you know, Meta, and you know, that's just, again, they have this huge network. There's going to be if you look at a standard bell curve, you're going to have your early adopters. You know, what's, you know, 16% of billions of people. You know, you're going to have that many people just initially on it. You know, that's going to generate value, and then you're going to have stuff flowing into that because that now has value. I mean, you have, for example, there's, I just saw it yesterday, there's somebody selling real estate on Meta already. Like, there's already people investing millions of dollars in virtual real estate.
Yeah.
And they're saying, you know, this is like buying Manhattan properties.
And Decentraland, I know, is
Right.
Is really popular.
And, you know, as things are getting more expensive, you know, outside, and you have this thing that you can just put on your face and escape into, becoming cheaper, right? You're going to have, you know, and you also have more ability in this virtual, you know, world to do what you want.
Now most people, so if you're indoctrinated and you're in crypto enough to understand what we're talking about, you just tend to accept the fact that there's a virtual world, right?
Yeah.
But for people that aren't in crypto or don't game, like, it's absurd. Like, they think it's incredulous. When you try to explain to them that virtual real estate has intrinsic value, they refuse to accept that.
Yeah, and I think that right now, the virtual real estate is kind of 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we are today, right? So right now you have, we'll back up. You know, a few years ago you had Google Glass that came out, right? You have this augmented reality thing. You know, you just started having iPhones that have IR sensors on them that you can, you know, map to things. You know, I was on, what was it? It was Amazon, and I was getting a TV stand for Christmas, and I was able to, using my iPhone, put it in my room and see how big it was, and it was perfect. Like, when I built it, that's how big it was, because I marked on the wall. I was like, let's see how good this is, and that's what it was, and it looked exactly like it was.
That's an amazing tool,
right? And so you're going to start seeing in Ray-Bans, you know, they're doing the Facebook Instagram story thing, so they partnered with Facebook. Ray-Bans has glasses you can wear that you can start like recording things and posting them on Instagram. You saw Snapchat goggles doing the same thing. But you're going to start having these bigger companies in eyewear, you know, start to buy into this augmented reality thing.
So, and it's fascinating, no doubt. And there's always gonna be people that will forfeit their own imagination in favor of somebody else's products. Because I just think that, when I think of the metaverse, I just think it's like everything, right?
Yeah,
Like, everything that's augmented by technology or an interface with the physical world that then can be described, you know, as content, you know, that, I feel like that's metaverse. I just don't like the idea of Facebook trying to co-opt, you know, the idea, and then trying to convince people that their best shot at the metaverse is to come along with them. You know, I think that people need to think more freely about that.
sure. You know, there's opportunities for competitors to disrupt that space for sure. I think that Facebook, using, you know, the capital that they have and the backing that they have and the people that they have hired, you know, that's kind of, you know, if we want that, that's the best way forward.
Do you ever think about it in terms of this next level antitrust kind of stuff coming into play? When something is so big, not from a capital standpoint, but just from a mind share
Yeah,
standpoint, I mean, are they gonna like throw some ethicists into the mix?
man, that'd be an interesting court battle, because they're gonna say, hey, you know, this whole monopoly thing, well, it turns out you own the world, you know, like, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do there, right?
Well,
Who owns the
and-
metaverse? Maybe that's a really good candidate for decentralization. Maybe everyone should own it, right?
Right.
So what technology is gonna run that? You know, what's the best platform for that? Is
And what
there
about
some,
laws?
you know, laws like that? Decentralization and smart contracts are really great for law too. You know, there's a lot of good applications.
And that's another thing, right? So when I first heard about NFTs, immediately, NFTs have been introduced to us through the scarcity narrative, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably the best way to introduce them, to get people to pay attention, because it's like art and it's collectibles and it's rareables.
Yeah,
So we're attracted to those things, but immediately I became more interested in how it would be applied ubiquitously to everything, right?
yeah.
To all the things that you just described.
Well, NFT, right? So you have this non-fungible token. You have, you know, one copy of it, right? And what does that kind of mirror in the real world? You know, well, I got one pen, right? I got one piece of property. I got one car. You know, what if, you know, we can start modeling that stuff and paying for it via an NFT? Like, here's the proof that you own this thing, and everyone knows it. You know. So
Yeah.
there's a really interesting project that came out. I think it's called Parcel or something like that. It's related to NFT, but not really. So it's John actually sent it to me earlier today. So it's like real estate. It's like a real estate ETF, but you own it through Solana. So you can. So they go out and they buy these pieces of property, and then you can own part of it.
It's like
Right.
fractionalized.
Right.
They're doing that with art now. There's a
Yeah,
token called
art's the same thing, yeah.
Elysian.
Okay.
My cousin was telling me about it. He's desperate for me to buy it, but that's what they're doing. They're buying masterworks, and then they're fractionalizing ownership.
Yeah. And I was thinking today, you know, like I have a lot of great ideas for this stuff. You know, not a lot of time to execute it, but you know, like, what if using the smart contract thing, you have you create a foundation that has 51%, so no way, like the population can't get control. You'll have like a board, you'll say, but you have like a tenant landlord smart contract. You know, the value of the home that you're in is based on the value assigned by your peers in the network, right? So
That's
I want
how-
to
yeah.
invest in this area. You know, there's going to be money pouring into it. Well, you know, now that goes up, and you know, you can have a smart contract that, because your property value goes up in a decentralized way, not controlled by the government. You know, my parents who live up in Cicero their property taxes just went up. Their assessment on their home went up when it didn't really. You know, they went and fought it and they won. But, you know, you have this government entity that's saying, hey, you know, I want sales tax. What do I got to do? Well, let's just raise the value of all the properties in the area because I'm the government, right? You know, with that decentralized, you wouldn't have that, right? So, you know, thinking about things like that, you know, can you model an entire like silo of you know how the world is today, and run that on some sort of technology like blockchain and distributed ledger? You know,
I'm certain that you can. I think everything's going to be better once it's perfected and once you've chosen the winners. Once that technology is applied to its maximum, I think it's going to be beneficial. Take voting, right?
yeah,
The morass, the terrible system that we have for doing probably the most important thing we can do, right, as Americans, and it's almost like punitive
yeah,
to try to do that, on a Tuesday, once a year, or however many times, you decide you're gonna do it. And they had, the best solution in the short term was the instant runoff voting, right? Where, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you basically, it's they call it, it was introduced as instant runoff, and they used it out west, but then now it's called something else. They've actually done it. What are they calling it now?
The instant runoff, what?
It's instant runoff, but they just gave it another name, and they've been using it now, like ranked choice or something like that.
Oh,
But at any rate, so voting is hard. We don't even use, like, if you can bank online, you can vote online, right? I mean, I think most people would agree with that. And-
Yeah.
And I would have made that statement even before, we had the ability to do things in an immutable way vis-a-vis the blockchain. But now with NFTs, I would say that that's never been more true, right? That we should be able to vote online. So hopefully within the next 10 years, we'll be doing that.
even if the technology is perfect, getting society's trust behind the technology, that there's not, some evil overlord that's writing the code for his, benefit,
You mean the same people that are like dispensing the vaccines?
Yeah, same people that are making the diable voting booths,
ranked choice voting, I think is the.
Yes, that was originally introduced as instant runoff. And it just makes sense. It's efficient. It's fair.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's endless things you can apply it to, and that's a really good tool. Decentralization, which is great. You have blockchain technology, which is everybody can see that. Everyone can see the votes, right?
You know how you know it's
And you have
great?
hash,
China banned Bitcoin, right? Not because China is anti-tech or anti-blockchain, right? They're the leaders. Their blockchain services network is the largest and the most robust. They're just against decentralization, right? They want the digital yuan, and they have it, right? It's programmable money. The digital yuan has, I heard, smart contract capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to look into this, but maybe a better thing to look at would be, the Tor Network. How's that doing now? What's that look like? What's the adoption rate?
Yeah.
See who's running that. See, because that's essentially, people who wanted anonymity running these servers, using it, stuff like that. And it is its own network in its own right. So something I'd like to research for sure.
How long has that been?
I'm not sure. I first heard about it, in high school? When LimeWire was a thing and you wanted to not get the Digital Millennium Copyright Act or whatever it was. get the notice sent to your house. Had one of those. Hey, you've been illegally sharing this stuff. Here's your one notice. You know, stuff like that.
Did you get one of those, John?
No, never.
Is it the Digital Millennium? Yeah, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA.
John was telling me a story earlier that he tried to steal cable. Well, no,
Yeah.
they had one cable.
Yeah,
Tell the
like-
story.
We had like one cable line for the whole house that was only supposed to go to one TV, and like I was trying to splice it for my room.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that there was coax running through the house already for an antenna on the roof,
Mm-hmm.
and I accidentally spliced the antenna into the second feed line on the splicer. And I started transmitting cable out the antenna, and so Time Warner came by and put a thing on the door because the planes going overhead were picking up cable TV interference on the radio transmissions.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy. You get in big trouble for that now.
yeah. They were basically, here's your one warning because it was on the door.
Yeah.
Come and inspect later.
Yeah.
I had
Our
everything
transmitter is
set up.
determined that
Yeah, exactly.
driving by with the vans and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And so the regs are coming, right? So XRP, I don't know if you got into that in your research, the SEC lawsuit against Ripple Labs.
Yeah. So that's what, 2018. That's due to be up soon, right?
Well-
They're going to start trading again soon.
Well, yeah, they're gonna settle, or they, doesn't matter what happens because it's all sealed.
Yeah.
So the popular belief is that it's already been settled and they're just waiting for an announcement, right?
Yeah.
Once they make that announcement, XRP is gonna go parabolic.
Ballistic.
right?
Yeah.
I just don't, I had XRP on Coinbase, but then just like everybody else, I don't know what you did, but as soon as the SEC sued Ripple and Coinbase said, that they're not gonna support it anymore, everybody, they gave everybody a window to get out of it, right?
Right.
I sold mine, I don't know what you
Yeah,
did.
that's where I ended up going sour on crypto for a while, was because I was into Binance, and then when they moved over to the
Hmm.
US exchange only, it smelled fishy to me, and then I left crypto for a while, I mean, I still had a Coinbase account, but I had like just a tiny bit in there,
Yeah.
And that was probably for like 18 months, and then stuff started trending back up again.
So if XRP is exonerated, right, so which means they're probably gonna get a fine, right? Which they're a big rich company, they don't care, they'll pay the fine. But because all the court documents are sealed, it means that only Bitcoin and XRP will be safe. Because there hasn't been a ruling on any other coin or token.
Well, XRP got in trouble for using an ICO as
That's
like
right.
a pseudo security IPO, right?
That's right.
So I think that, going back, Bitcoin started, Ethereum started, Ethereum has, its smart contracts that were released. You have DAOs that started, you had the whole Silk Road thing, 2016, I think, 2017, right? So you have the Silk Road lockdown that they shut down, got a bunch of Bitcoin out of that.
And just,
You have-
describe Silk Road, I mean, I think most people know.
Yeah, so Silk Road was kind of this, bad website you go to and you could trade anything, illicit, dark web, illicit substances.
A lot of drugs.
Whatever it is. So it's just,
Murder for hire.
right. And so you just had this thing that wasn't indexed on Google that you could just go to and trade Bitcoin for whatever you wanted. And that you got to sit back and put on, your politician suit and tie and look at that and say, okay, well, how tech savvy is the general American? How tech savvy is the general politician? The answer is not very, right? So they see this thing that's a threat, right? Because it's tied to the Silk Road. Well, how are they moving their money around? It's not. We can't track that. It's not bank accounts. You know, we know how to deal with bank accounts. We don't know how to deal with Bitcoin. You know, so they just immediately blacklisted this technology because the technology was used for, you know, illicit purposes when, you know, it could be used for good, right? So it's you know, it's kind of like the whole, you know, gun debate, right? You know, it's the person behind the gun, right? It's not the gun itself. So they're just saying, you know, they're blacklisting the gun right now. But I think because that was in 2016, 2017 that all those bad things were happening, you know, time is going on and they're starting to see wide adoption. You know, JP Morgan Chase uses their own blockchain technology. You have, it's just this, it's inevitably going to be controlled, right? But I think technologically, the people who are making those decisions are starting to educate themselves and see that, yes, you know, it can be used for good. You can use it for hunting. You can use it for sport, you know, as far as like the gun analogy goes. So there will be regulation. I think everyone's going to regulate it, all major countries. You know, you just see India's considering banning cryptocurrency. That was in the news a couple days ago. But I think it's just going to come down to whoever figures out how to regulate it first. Everyone's just going to copy and paste that, and then it's going to go from there. But it's starting to be adopted by everyone. And I guess another analogy for that would be when I was in Boulder, weed was legalized in Colorado. I don't smoke myself, but I saw on campus every 420 there would be 40,000 people that would come in. They would have event staff, right? And it was just this massive inflow of people, right? So I kind of see that as like, oh, well, you know, Bitcoin, everyone's flowing into it. And then you have the regulation that shut everything down. There was 1 year that they just said no more. And that was due to federal funding. The university gets like $1 billion in federal funding a year. They said, you know, it's legal in your state, but it's illegal federally. And if you keep, you know, doing this, we're going to pull your federal funding. And so 1 year they deployed SWAT teams and they put, you know, fish oil all over the quad and they roped everything off, and
Seriously?
that was it. That was the end of it. It was just 1 year, done. But now you see there's you know, dispensaries opening and it's being regulated, and you know, I think that's how it's going to be. You're going to see, you know, 2016, 2017, 2018, you just saw the lockdown, you know, nothing. No one's doing this until we can figure it out. And now they're starting to figure it out. And now they're going to start slowly opening, you know, the dispensary. You're going to start seeing other states follow suit, other states being other countries, you know, and they're all going to have their own regulations. But it's going to allow for adoption of it, right?
It's
And that's where you're
ridiculous
seeing
how Clinton-based policy goes from country to country. If you listen to the Canadian news, like policy gets put in place here and policy gets put in place like this, like carbon copy up there, you know?
Yeah.
And you saw it a lot with the pandemic, you know? One thing we get initiated here, if I listen to news there, the same thing's getting initiated there, it might be called something slightly different, you know?
Right, and you can kind of see that through like even the coronavirus lockdowns, right? At least from what I saw and how it was pandered to me in the news, it seemed like the U.S. was like a leading, you know, force on, you know, this is what you have to do, right? And then you see all the other countries following suit. You know, barring some other countries, you know, like New Zealand just completely shut down.
Right.
You know, you're going to have those specific countries doing their own thing, but generally it's you know, flows through the United States. It, you know, we figure it out and then it's, you know, exported, you know.
Well, especially in the case of crypto, you know, because we don't want to lose the reserve currency, right? Like China wants the yuan to be adopted throughout the world.
Right.
You know, they don't want. They're so far ahead with that, You know, they've spent years developing blockchain services network throughout Africa, South America, and now we're trying to play catch up, and so it sounds like we're gonna have some hybridized version, you know, the CBDC, the Fed coin, is gonna be something that they fuse to the USDC, it sounds like, increasingly.
Yeah, and I think that just based on how China's run, right, and how we're run, you know, we have the freedom to innovate, right? We have the freedom to do what we want to do and let the market decide, right? Whereas China's kind of, you know, if the higher ups don't like it, then, you know, it's dealt with accordingly. They either, you know, adopt it and they're able to mass produce it very quickly,
What
or
happens is you end up with a huge black market in China, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. Everything moves underground and everybody just disregards the mainstream and plays out in the open, the game of the government, and then goes, you know, onto a VPN and does what they want to do.
yeah. And as far as like the dollar and currency and stuff, you know, I think I was reading somewhere that currency, the main adopted currency changes every, what, like 40 or 80 years? I forget, it was like one of those multiples, but, you know, it's coming to be about time that the new
reserve currency.
reserve currency changes. You know, it was the pound and now it's the dollar, and, you know, what's that next one gonna be?
Yeah,
And maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's Dogecoin, who knows, you know?
maybe it's Bitcoin, but it's definitely time, because when you look at, you know, how far we've come from the institution of the Federal Reserve and the gold standard, and then off the gold standard,
Right.
and now there's not even
Well,
like fractional reserve. Your bank doesn't have to hold any cash on hand.
We've
Yeah.
all been looking forward to a world currency for at least like the last 40 years, you know, if not longer. It's just, they all want to have control of the world currency, and that's what scares them, is there isn't going to be control if crypto comes into place like Bitcoin, you know.
Right, so I think you can relinquish control, but because it's decentralized and because everyone can have access to it, you can still tax it, you can still,
Right.
you know, do what you want to do with it in a fair way, right? So I don't see the big deal, like, why not, you know? Just have this layer 0, right, and then your layer 1 is, you know, do your tax rate on it, you know, but you have to be, you know, registered or whatever, you know, figure that part out, but.
Yeah, it's too easy. It makes too much sense, like ranked choice voting, or, you know, it's so perfect that it's too perfect, right? Because they don't want, XRP is a great example, because XRP was designed for cross-border settlement, I think exclusively, right? Remittances and cross-border settlement. So when you're living in this country and, you know, you're from El Salvador and you want to send money home, you know, a remittance, that gets stepped on. Like, it costs you money to send it, costs money for your family to receive it, and there's like slippage and all this shit that goes on in the meantime, right? While it travels through the ether for 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, so it costs you, you know, 40% of what you sent to do it. XRP stepped up and they said, hey, we'll settle remittances instantly for a fraction of a penny. Oh, and as far as cross-border settlement of massive, you know, amounts of money, no problem, same deal. That's why I think who was it, Jay Clayton was the SEC chair that filed that lawsuit, did it in the 11th hour, because they wanted to slow that product down. It was just too technologically advanced for the primitive thinking of the old school banking, old fi.
Well, exactly why we have the crypto laws here in New York, you know? Because the old world
Slow it
banking,
down.
slow it down.
Slow it down, yeah.
Which, and I get the regs part. Like, I had a couple friends,
Government wants their money.
they got liquidated, these guys got liquidated last week with the when the market dumped, all these exchanges like KuCoin, you know, that are like not the most reputable, but
Sure.
they're still solid projects.
Yeah.
They have these like scam wicks and I don't know how they generate it, or if it's just, you know, accident that, you know, that they just kind of take advantage of. But like, Bitcoin wicked down to like something absurd, man, like 20,000. And based on that scam wick, all those
Immediately
positions got liquidated,
Yeah.
including like a bunch of people I know lost everything. No recourse.
Limit orders they had in place, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, leverage trading.
Yeah, I got it, yeah. Yeah, no, if you go up on KuCoin, there's a casino up there, and, you know, I play with it, but I don't mess with any of their leverage trading, because, I mean, they're doing crazy token raffles and anything.
It's like, it's an absolute, like,
It's Wild West.
Yeah,
field, yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. When you go to their
I mean,
site, it's
You
just
know,
like,
you go to Coinbase and there's some feel of reputability that you're dealing with a financial institution of some sort, but you go to KuCoin and it's just like going to an Indian casino, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think right now it's kind of like a security through obscurity thing, right? So I tried signing up for it, and I was like, you know, there's so much for me to read, you know, and to even get money into it, it's like,
KuCoin?
yeah, it's like,
Oh, I got Shiba over there, and to get it out, it was a nightmare, you know, I
It's
had to
all-
wait, I had to sit on it for like 2 weeks until there was that crazy Shiba pump,
mm-hmm.
and then the transfer fees were like really cheap during that pump, and I was able to move it during there to my wallet, and then, well, it's been sitting there ever since. I should have just cashed out that day, it would have been more advantageous than
Right.
sitting on it, but you never know where that's gonna go in the future, you know?
Yeah.
As people come into the space and they start trading with leverage like right away. I mean, it's only for experienced traders, and you gotta watch it like a hawk.
Yeah.
You know, they'll take a leverage position and go to sleep, and then they'll wake up and they'll wonder why they're liquidated.
Yeah. It's, you know, I've been trading securities and options and stuff like that for 5 or 6 years now. Like, that's, I don't understand how people can just do that. You know, they want to make their money, and they, you know, watch a couple videos on, you know, this is a trend line and this is support, and here's, what's the wave theorem, right?
Yeah.
Elliott waves, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on the third Elliott wave, and you know,
It's so easy to
and
get
then they
a
look
false
for
sense of
confirmation
confidence with
bias
that stuff.
on videos like this on the internet,
It's
and it's
all
like,
confirmation bias, yeah, the whole space is designed to get you to do it, because the YouTubers are the biggest bag holders, right? So
Right.
they want you to get in.
right,
And
like,
they lie to your face, you know, like they'll be pretending to give you the best advice, but in reality, they just want to sell you your bags on their way out.
right. Well, they know, you know, a lot of people are buying it, so I'm going to make this really positive thing on YouTube and put it out. and-
You always see.
Put hashtag crypto on
Pointing
it.
out the low-hanging fruit and not mentioning the really good ones that they're holding for themselves, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And all the pre-sale stuff, you know, the ICO stuff, I mean, that's the only way these days you're gonna make money on a low cap gem, is if you're in the pre-sale.
Right.
You know, you're invited to buy it, you know. It's definitely, there are certain areas that need to be, I mean, it's like standards, you know, just basic standards and measurements, you know, it's like somebody goes around and to make sure that the, you know, gas pumps are calibrated so that you're getting, you know, your fair share of gas. You know,
Right.
That's not automatic, right? You have to have some oversight there. you know,
Yeah.
And I think that with some of these exchanges, they need to invite some more, you know, regulation.
Yeah, and you know, I see another federal agency spinning up, and that's what they'll handle. You know, they'll make sure, you know,
Yeah.
exchanges and stuff are doing the right thing, and they're
This
not.
space is rife with scammers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I mean, I'd say for every legitimate project, there's gotta be 1,000 rug pulls and
Yeah.
just scams.
Well, I think a lot of that's, you know, it comes with money flowing into it and interest and stuff like that, right? So when you get these big booms of interest, kind of like we saw at the beginning of the year, that's when you get like the scams that start coming out. And you know, you get things like Asscoin and, you know,
Oh my God,
stuff like
there's
that. Like, people
there's a-
just buy into it for the name, right?
Oh, there
There's-
was a huge like pump in porn tokens
Yeah.
like a month ago, yeah.
And what?
Porn tokens.
Porn?
Yeah, yeah.
So you get things like that, and then, you know, all it is a clone of Litecoin that's rebranded, and, you know, you give yourself 50,000 of them, and it goes up to, you know, $1, and then you sell it all, and then you
Yeah.
take the website offline, and
Yeah,
it goes to zero, you know?
The classic rug pull. I think Mark Cuban got hit with one of those. Everybody was in that.
I think
frenzy.
everyone got hit with one of those, you know? Like, I know people who have, you know, they have whole Discord channels of, you know, go on this obscure exchange, and at 4:39 p.m., we're gonna go pump this one obscure coin to whatever it is.
I was on BTC-E for like ever. I had a pretty nice dead wallet, and then things had gotten sketchy, and I pulled everything off for maybe a tiny amount of something. And then one day I was like, let's go up there and see if that tiny amount is like amounted to anything. And it was like a big federal sign that it had been seized
Yeah.
by the feds. And
Your
I was like,
assets
"Oh."
have been seized.
Yeah, I guess it was good that I got the feeling pulled out because,
Right.
yeah. You know, at the time it was like everyone's like, oh, I had this much of this and this much of that, and now Bitcoin's like at like $10,000, and you know, the truth was if I really held, I still would have lost it all. You know.
Right.
And a lot of people, when they get hit like that, they're so ashamed that they never tell the story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, securities trading. Everyone tells you that their wins.
Yeah, that's all you hear.
No
That's all
one
hear
tells
is
you their
how great.
losses.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
My cousin was trading on Nexo, and he was he had a loan on Nexo, and he had staked his XRP, and so when the lawsuit hit, Nexo sent a notice that they weren't going to let you use XRP as collateral anymore, and so they and then he wasn't privy in that moment. And so they liquidated his position because even though he had the XRP there as collateral, they said it was because it was, you know, subject to this lawsuit. And yet Nexo used everybody else's XRP for collateral for their own, to pay off their own loans. It was like this, there's a lawsuit now. He's actually named in the lawsuit. It's craziness.
so it's like a Martin Shkreli move, if you know who that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Where he was using his, he was using shares of another company to leverage to pay off loans for his other company.
He
Yeah,
used
what do they
that,
call that? There's a name for that.
Fraud.
Clawback?
No, it's huh?
Clawback?
Is that what it is?
Yeah, clawback when the government goes after you after ill-gotten gains.
When you use
No,
securities
when
from
you-
another company
when
to pay
you
for
like
the
when you're
loans.
mixing, you know,
A tumbler?
I don't know.
When you're mixing funds to hide it?
No, when you're using like if you go bad in one position and you use funds from another position. To,
Yeah, there's.
It's not kiting, is
The
it?
check kiting.
I mean, there's like a kind of a check
kiting.
kiting.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah,
I know check kiting's a thing. You know.
Yeah. I know that there's particulars with the stock market. that if you
Securities
do that,
fraud.
You can get banned for like 6 months. You,
And that's another reason
if
why.
you pull a position and then you use the funds from that position to set another position before that's settled and it turns out to be, you know, you use that difference to profit off of something that might have actually been a loss.
Yeah, it's kind of like front running or something.
You're, yeah.
But that's why the space is so, has been so crazy, especially this summer, is that crypto people were like, oh, we'll wait till the the institutional money comes in. But then when the institutional money came in, along came the seasoned traders with it, and they're like, oh, this is like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
I can dump this market, right? Everybody's gonna panic stop, and then I can turn back and feed. I mean, they were doing it all summer. You know, you're getting these flash crashes all summer
Well-
because the whales were just manipulating
the 80s and stuff, where they just started, implementing computers and algorithms and mean reversion theorem and all that stuff, right? So you have Bitcoin, which is unregulated, right? And you can start to apply all those learnings that you had from early securities trading into Bitcoin, and now you're able to have this kind of accurate-ish model because Bitcoin's just flooded with retail, right? So they're all going to be fear, greed mentality, and you can apply a lot of those learnings and actually get a good model and generate profit off of it. So I think there's a lot of that going on too.
Definitely. And so,
And it works.
It works, and it never sleeps, and unlike traditional markets. So that's like in the space, you've got a lot of YouTubers that cry about manipulation, right? And I think they'd be talking about what you just mentioned. But then there are other people in the space, like Ben Cowan, right? Into the crypto. He's like a data science guy, really brilliant guy, makes his own charts. He just maintains that it's just the market. He doesn't differentiate manipulation because he just knows that's just the market.
There's a really good video on YouTube where Kramer, so you have this guy who's sitting on TV saying, buy this, buy that, as like securities and stocks.
Mad Money
Right.
Kramer? Mad Money Kramer?
Mad Money Kramer.
Yeah.
So there's a really good video on YouTube that he sits down, because he used to, I believe, run a hedge fund, right? And so
yeah.
there's a very good video of him on YouTube explaining how exactly they were manipulating the market with very small amounts of money to, close positions out or have the stock finish within this specific range because they had options expiring that they needed that specific price, right? So you have securities and Bitcoin even, right? So the price isn't like set. It's what was the last person willing to pay for it, right?
Right. Yeah, you see that a lot in penny stocks.
Right. So So that's the value of it, is what was the last person willing to pay for it.
And I did some experimenting when I was on BTC-E with like PPC and Namecoin, where they were like ridiculously low volume coins,
Mhm.
and I picked like a pool of a couple $100, and so I would just follow the market by the 5-minute chart, the 15-minute chart, and the 30-minute chart, and I'd buy tiny bits, on the 5-minute chart, right before the chart went over, and then I'd buy a tiny bit right at the 15-minute chart, and at the half-hour chart, and what I was doing was creating a pumping trend line, and people started talking on the forum, are you seeing this trend line happening, You get 3 hours into it, and then all of a sudden the thing would rocket up because people are watching the trend line pop
Right.
for 3 hours, and now, look at that's dedicated pump. They're not paying attention that there's no volume, it's just one guy doing it. They're just looking at pump, 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 pump.
Right.
Everybody jumps in.
I did a similar thing on Reddit. So I was doing, back when I started my social media stuff, I was like, what's like a gray hat way to generate buzz around something?
Mhm.
And I had this really cool video me and my brother shot up at my camp, where it was, he threw like a shotgun shell, and I caught it in the chamber, loaded it, and shot it. And we did it like
How many times does it take?
we did it over and over. It actually didn't take that long, maybe 40 or so.
Pretty good.
And I was like, okay, let me see what I can do with this, because it's a pretty cool video.
Sure.
I posted it to Reddit, and I'm like, oh, check this out. Nothing, right? And I was like, okay, let's see what I can do. And I made, I think it was 100 Reddit accounts. I still have a Google spreadsheet with all the logins and all that stuff. And I posted it and would log into 5 of them, upvote it, log out, VPN, go somewhere else, log in, upvote it, VPN, you know, rinse and repeat 20 times. And then it made it to a trending page, right? And then people started watching it. And then because it was like a gun control thing, that I think I made a comment like, oh, that's super unsafe, you know, and just made it just like this thing that people started talking about. Because like, I was wearing ear protection, I had glasses on, we were in like a private thing, I was looking down, like there was no, it was like completely safe, right?
Sure.
And I knew that was gonna spark a discussion, but I also knew that it was going to be trending because I liked it with 100 accounts that I owned,
Yeah.
right? And it kind of blew up, and then I got contacted by break.com and they offered me like $400. And I was like, yeah, sure. See what you guys can do with it. And then got put on ridiculousness. So, you know, it's there's certain things you can do for sure that are,
And that's just like
Little
one
gray hats.
person, you know, like.
right, that's one
just
person.
Goofing, right now, then throwing like bots and all that other bullshit,
Yeah,
it's like, oh my
and there's
god.
also like a factor of timing, like, you can put the same post on at, let's say like 10 in the morning, when like everybody's vibing, and
Yeah.
it could just take off, or you could drop it in at like 8 o'clock at night and nobody's paying attention, and it just goes nowhere, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's, you know, with my company, there's times, Instagram posting times, right?
Mhm.
Different days of the week,
Yeah.
at different times.
Mhm.
If you're, you know, for the York, the restaurant, you know, I hit them on Friday, like 5:12, 5:30. People are getting out of work. What do I want to do? Oh, that drink looks really good. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to go there. It's like instant,
Yeah, Friday right after work,
Right?
perfect time, you know?
but it's like, you know, you get a video and it's like,
Monday at 9
I'm
AM,
there,
people are,
you know?
are checking their social media at work, you know? Yeah.
yeah, it's like, oh, well, I just saw this thing and it's live right now at the York and that looks like a good drink. I think I'll swing by because it's cheap and it's on happy hour, you know?
And nature abhors a vacuum, and you're right there, you know, with the product.
Right. So it's,
They don't need much of it. I mean, to this day, if I see a McDonald's commercial, like, I want like a quarter pounder.
right,
I watched the movie The Founder, and like, we had to go and get McDonald's,
Mhm.
because I couldn't get through that whole movie without eating a McDonald's.
Yeah, I hear you, man. They wrote me in with their breakfast.
I haven't had McDonald's in like 15 years.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying, I haven't had, I did have McDonald's today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had McDonald's for lunch.
Was it good?
No, it was okay because, like, we were talking about timing. It was 10:45 AM, and I knew that they're making their burgers for lunch at 10:45 AM, so I was gonna get it fresh.
Yeah.
So it was good because.
Well, at least
You
you're
got the
eating
timing now.
fresh.
Yeah.
It was like fresh, you know?
Yeah.
But,
That was a lie. I did have it a couple years. I had, my friend Ben said that their salads were really good, so I went and tried the chicken salad.
I went through.
It actually was pretty
like 10 years where I didn't touch it, 15 years.
Yeah.
And then there was a period when I was laid off in LA, and then it was just like, oh, $1 burger today,
Yeah.
$1 burger tomorrow.
Yeah. It's convenient. It's right there. It's,
Yeah.
you know, I used to love Big Macs.
Mhm.
There, you know, and you could take a major philosophical position on
Oh.
like any end of that
I
conversation.
had a whole philosophy on McDonald's. I created the McDonald's diet. I had dropped down to like my slimmest since like high school on McDonald's while I was laid off because I wouldn't get the fries, and if I got like a drink, I like split with my girlfriend. I was like, here, you know, here, have the other half. So I would just get the burger, and it was like basically an Atkins diet. It was just like straight protein,
Yeah.
and I dropped like 20 pounds.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, calories in, calories out. So that's like one of my specialties is, exercise physiology. So I could go on for days about that.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of my degrees. It was a pre-medicine with a focus in exercise physiology.
And nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, nutrition goes with that.
Yeah.
So I was a
Yeah.
professional cyclist for a while, and that's like,
Yeah.
you know, I invested so much time in research into, you know, what's the optimal thing to put in my body and why is it helping and what, you know, and then I would get the knowledge of the pathways and, you know, digestion and all that stuff, you know, resting metabolic rate. Well, what affects that? You know, I had a blood pressure monitor next to my bed, and I'd wake up and take it every morning and plot that and plot my heart rate and see if I was, you know, resting adequately. And if I was, you know, if I was getting sick, you know, I could usually tell like a day in advance before any symptoms because of, my heart rate would go up, you know, stuff like that.
What'd you eat for breakfast today?
Today, I actually didn't eat today. Didn't eat breakfast today. Yeah, I generally skip
Did
it.
you eat anything? So you do intermittent fasting?
It's not so much intermittent fasting, it's just I'm not really hungry in the morning because I
Yeah.
just eat a lot at dinner.
Yeah.
That's kind of my one thing, and I wish I would stop doing that, but that's kind of, you know, I'm in school, I'm working, you know, I'm helping Danny, and I've got other projects going on. It's just kind of the way
Sure.
it works. So, ideally, you know, you eat a lot of smaller meals throughout the day, and you have, you know, a wide variety of things you eat, lots of colors, protein, non-protein, you know, carbs, stuff like that, just a well-balanced diet. I don't really believe in the, you know, the Atkins diet or any diet, you know, really.
Sure.
You know, the best way to do it is if you're gonna diet, you know, make sure you're getting the proper ratios of everything and just control your caloric intake, right? So it's gonna be hard, but that's, you know, that's what you have to do. So,
Yeah,
that
portion
means counting
control is
everything.
huge. People don't realize, like, when I was trying to lose weight, like, I cut down the size of the plate that I ate on.
Yeah.
It's huge, you know, it's like if you're eating on a plate that's half the size, you're just gonna fill up the plate with half as much food. And
yeah, and dieting and talking to people who wanna diet, and it's kind of like you have to have this preface of you need to control everything you eat, and like I have a scale, but like you have to realize that you're doing this for a goal, and it's not like, you can't have it turn into an eating disorder, right? Which is like one of the biggest things. Because you get so ingrained in this is this many calories, and you know, my friends are asking me to go out and I'm only gonna have water, and like liquid calories are like a huge thing for people with eating disorders, like.
So were you attracted to that from like a performance standpoint, or how, what got you interested in that particular discipline?
Yeah, so cycling, a really big thing is power to weight ratio. So you can have this thing on your bike called the power meter, which measures how hard you're pressing down on your pedal. And then you divide that by a revolution. So it's depending on the length of your crank arm, right? So you have your gears in the front and your pedal, and there's a distance, and that's called the crank arm, that your pedal goes onto, right? So you can figure out the circumference of the circle that it makes, and then you can have your average load on that circle, and then you can factor in time in that, and then you can get, well, I'm doing this many watts, right? So just like a light bulb, 100 watts. Microwave, 1,000 watts, right? There's a really good way to pit individuals against each other, and that's watts per kilogram is the measurement. So it's how much power you're putting out per your weight. And so the more power you can put out, and the less you weigh, the faster you're going to be able to go up hills and accelerate and things like that, right? So naturally you can control both of those, right? One through training and one through dieting. So I wanted to do both, and those are really the only two metrics that you have. You know, surface area is another one, but you can't really control that. So it's train a lot and eat well, and then control how much you weigh, right? And those are the two things that you can control. So I got really into the thing that I could control outside of training, which was, you know, how much you eat and what you're eating.
Do you drink alcohol?
Now I do, yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I lived like a monk for 6 years. So.
What do you like to drink?
What do I like to drink?
I mean, you're drinking at Danny's bar, right? So
Yeah.
that's,
So You can ask all my friends. I'll say the same thing. I usually say it with beer, but my saying is I like two kinds of beer: cold beer and free beer. So I'll have whatever.
Do you like beer?
Yeah, I like beer. I've been trending more towards tequila now because we're doing the whole tequila program over at the York.
Sure.
And they just use high quality ingredients for everything. So it's, you know,
Yeah.
I go and drink there and I don't get a hangover
Obsessed.
ever. You know?
Right. Clean.
That's the whole thing. Everything's clean and
Mine's tequila. I have the digestive issue and I can't drink tequila anymore because I burnt a hole in my intestines.
Oh,
with
man.
Tequila.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Gotta
that
cut
how
back
you
now.
did it?
Yes, it was. I burnt a hole in my intestines with tequila.
You got like
I was like,
2 fingers of
I
that
was
down
like,
Julio over there.
yeah. I had intestinal bleeding and I continued to ignore and pretend nothing was happening until I was like, had a perforated.
Wow. What were like symptoms of that? Just like it just hurt in your gut, or
you know, get like a sharp pain in,
Okay.
in my side here. You know, it kept spiking for a few years, like at Easter time and Halloween, and I wasn't connecting that I was eating all these kids' candy with like peanuts and almonds and stuff.
So you had diverticulitis, is that
Yeah. But what was causing it was, you know, I'd go at night and I'd have several shots of tequila, you know, and, well, I love tequila, so let's just forget about that, you know?
throw that song on tequila?
You know? Yeah, and then towards the end, I was like, I don't think I should be drinking anymore. I was like, oh, you're fine, you know? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
then it was like a week later, I was in the hospital. So.
Yeah, I mean, as far as dieting goes, tequila is one of the lowest calorie alcohols that you can drink.
Is it?
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of. I think it is the lowest one, even more so than vodka. So you see, like athletes will have vodka sodas or tequila waters and stuff like that. That's why.
Sometimes I'll have tequila, but it'll be like a shot, like over in like for like 3 months,
Yeah,
you know.
more of a celebratory thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really miss it. It's truly my favorite liquor. You know,
Yeah.
I'm reduced to brandy now.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll enjoy it. for
Yeah.
you. I'll have one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I met this guy in Florida last year, and then he was an avid cyclist. He was probably 60. Guy was, you know,
Leaned out.
just
Yeah.
crazy, right? He had like this big Muppet head, this big shock of like crazy hair, and he was a framer. He was from Hawaii, and he had come to Florida to help one of his friends put a roof on this building. And I met him, and I liked him instantly, like super animated, and they had just finished up for the day, and they were like slamming beers. And I was really, really looking forward to interacting with him again when they came back from Miami the next week. And I actually had to leave. I was on my way back up here. I was in North Carolina, and I got a phone call from his buddy, and he's like, yeah, you know, Greg went out for, you know, like, did like a 60-mile ride. He went back to his friends where he was staying, went in the backyard, poured the hose over his head, and like dropped dead.
Wow.
Heart
That's
attack?
crazy.
Stroke?
I don't know what and I never really heard, because I was, my interaction with him was peripheral at best, but I was like, it really like shocked me, man, because he just made such an impression, you know, and he was like, looked like he was in like just great shape, which, you know, obviously there's things beneath, you know, but it was, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, when you are an elite athlete, or you know, super competitive, or you train a lot, you know, just like you go work out at the gym and you can get bigger biceps, your heart actually can grow bigger. It's called athlete's heart. So, you know, the bigger the muscle, the more apt it is to fail, right?
Sure.
And cardiovascularly, right? So, you see a lot of elite athletes, you know, with 50% bigger hearts than the normal person.
50%.
Yeah, it's like crazy. And, you know, with that, you know, if you don't keep it up, then, you know, it starts to wear on you, and you have all this extra heart mass, and it's not being utilized, and, you know, you could start getting cardiovascular issues, and,
So it makes sense, right? It's a muscle.
yeah.
50%.
Yeah, I mean,
That's amazing.
I think it's even more than that.
Wow.
I'd have to look at the specific numbers on it, but yeah, it's up there. And that's actually how they used to do like greyhound races. You're familiar with like dog races and
Sure.
stuff like that. So there's this lining around your heart called the pericardium, and dogs have it too. And in order to increase their performance, what they were doing is they were surgically cutting the pericardium on the dogs so that their hearts could grow larger and they would start winning more.
So dirty.
And that's
Crazy.
You know, that was a form of dog doping, right? Was cutting the pericardium
Amazing.
to make their hearts larger.
Is that similar to how sometimes you see with horses where they like drop dead right before they get to the finish line?
One just died
Yeah, I mean,
yesterday.
it's oh really?
The Kentucky Derby winner that got disqualified dropped dead
Really?
yesterday.
It wasn't, that was because the doping scandal they said was.
That's why he was
they said
disqualified,
it was
yeah.
like a mistaken drug mix or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
He died.
Yeah.
It was a cold. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of one of the reasons I got out of competitive cycling, amongst others, was that's if you kept doing it, it's it
Ravages your body.
you might think that it's doing good things for your body, but everything is good in moderation, right? Not in excess.
No,
So-
no doubt. I mean, you've got a limited amount of time to be able to perform at that level.
Right.
Yeah.
To be at the top tier, you have to be. I was training 25 hours a week,
I
30
did
hours a week.
athletics in my 20s that if I did now, I would just simply have a heart attack,
Yeah.
It was just like, oh yeah, let's just push it that much farther,
I remember I was sleeping 13 hours a day. Like,
I believe it.
do a main sleep cycle at night, go to bed at 9, and then take a nap during the day. Rinse and repeat, go to the gym, go do a 6-hour ride, fit classes in when I could, go and do that,
Yeah, balance is key,
so,
especially when you're trying to live, right?
yeah. I think I'm having more fun now, It was great. I met a lot of great people along the way. It's
Well, you
such a
you
small
did it.
world.
You got it out of your system young.
Right.
It's not going to have a lasting effect on you.
Taught me, if you have goals, right, that's the first step, have something you work towards to.
Obsession. Like a
Obsession,
maniacal
yeah.
obsession.
Know exactly how to just go live like a monk for 6 years and
Yeah.
go do that, So if I ever have to, I could get back to that. Or, if I ever got involved with a project that, I thought was the next big thing, That's kind of why I'm diving into crypto now, is because, there's that, where's the shovel, right?
Right.
If I find the shovel, I know exactly, I'm just gonna go into hiding.
And you will,
till it's done.
because you're gonna build the shovel. You're gonna build the next shovel.
Right.
And that's what you could wait, right, and hope that you get it, or you can say, okay, I've gleaned enough information from my experience in this space to know that this is what I need to do, and I got a feeling that that's probably the approach you're gonna take.
Yeah, I was asked, hey, you're in computer science now, you're a software engineer, you have experience as a software engineer, you have resume experience, you have years of experience, why are you getting your master's? And I was like, getting my master's is, think about it like carpentry, right? So you're gonna go build a house. Your bachelor's gives you the hammer, right, and some nails, and you can get a house together, right? But I want more tools on my tool belt, So when I go to build the mansion that I'm hoping to build, I'm gonna have everything I need. I'm gonna have the planer, make the doors straight, stuff like that. So that's all the education is you're just getting more and more tools, putting them in your belt. And not only do you have more tools, but you got to know how to use them, right? And what their purpose is and how do you apply it. And so that's I have an extreme hunger for learning pretty much everything because, I'm just getting more and more tools and learning how to apply them. And, I think that the difference between being smart and being intelligent is smart is you're just given the tools and you have the tools, but intelligence is learning how to apply them, right? You have, for example, I could have this thing in marketing that I'm applying towards a client, right? So I have this technique that I'm using over here, and then I see in like crypto, it's like, hey, how do I get more developers into using this network or using this platform? Well, now I can use what I learned over here and apply it here, and that's going to be like a radically new thing that nobody's ever seen, but they have. It's just in a different problem space,
and it's
right?
going to be proprietary. Right?
And it'll be proprietary. And then maybe even linking those two together. So if I wanted Radix to take off, I'm going to do guerrilla social media marketing. I'm going to, make some of the stuff I do now. So like for the York, for example, like you sit down, you create your ideal persona, and you go, well, where are those people now? I got to go out and I got to find those people. It used to just be, word of mouth will be good enough and it'll get you around and people will start coming in. And that's no longer the case because you're fighting billion-dollar companies for people's attention. You're not going to win, right? So you got to utilize those companies in different and unique ways to get to those people. And so a good example, some like backdoor secret stuff that I do is like an insight. So for the York, for example, so it's a really nice high-scale restaurant and bar with some nightlife, right? So who else does that in the area? And it's got to be local too, right? So who else does that in the area? You've got Skinny Atlas, Fayetteville, Manlius, all those we'll say like towns, right? All of those have a high percentage of the persona that I want to bring in to the restaurant. So I can go on Instagram and go, hashtag Fayetteville, right? And I'll go see the highest performing posts in Fayetteville, and I'll go to that person's public profile because it's on locations. When you search for something, it'll pull it up. So I know that it's public, and then I'll see, this person, vaguely fits this persona that I want to bring into the restaurant. I'm going to, as the York, directly friend them, right? And then I'm also going to like something on their profile. I'm also going to comment as a real person, something positive, right? And you as a person sitting there, you're going to go, why is this place adding me? And wow, this is a real person interacting with me and not some fake bot, Instagram targeted ad thing that they spun up or super general about it. This person liked the photo and they said, oh, that's a cute corgi, right? Or something like that. And they're going to go, well, now I'm interested to see who this is, right? Everyone does it, They're sitting at home, they're on Instagram,
Sure. And there's an intimate connection.
there's the intimate connection, right?
Yeah, it's
And so you kind of have this like marketing which has gone from CPM, which is a CPM-based model, so marketing that's like cost per thousand. So you put a billboard up and you have 1,000 people look at it, and what's your cost per the 1,000 people to look at it, right? So that's a CPM model versus like now it's transitioning into depending on what you want to do. For my instance, there I want to get the word out, so CPM's good, but I'm also looking for, if I get a customer in, they're going to come back because this place is awesome, right? So if I get somebody in there, the average price per head's like 60 bucks, right? So for me, one person is worth at least 60 bucks. You know, they're gonna come in over the lifetime value of the customer. You know, they're gonna come in more than once, hopefully. So you're just generating revenue off of each person that you're directly targeting. So for me to just spend my time and reach one person and just have them look at the profile and go, you know, I know that they're gonna like that because that's the persona that I have. This person will want to come in. That there's a high percentage chance that if they don't follow us, they'll follow us back. And if they have never come in, well, now they know in the back of their head, well, I'm gonna want to go to New York, you know? And that's really easy to do is, you know, you utilize this platform in a different way to just market for yourself for free. You know, all it costs is your time.
So, take a company like Digital Hive, like, are they using that tactic? Or are they, you know, that, because it's, you know, it's a big company that basically their job is to do what you just described, but I don't think they're doing it as intimately as you're doing it.
So I think, I'm not too sure. I know they just sold.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. I think what they were doing was just paid advertising, I think. So you can go on Instagram and say, hey, you know, I have a specific demographic that I want to target. Instagram, here's some money. I need you to place an ad in front of somebody. And that works. Works great. As far as like doing some of the intimate stuff, right? So you have to pay somebody to sit there that's going to do that, that recognizes the persona. You know, you're starting to get into high investment for low return, right?
Right.
So for the York as a client, right, that's that kind of hand-to-hand combat is good because they're, you know, we're just trying to get more people in word of mouth in that way. But if you're trying to sell something and you want massive amounts of people, then the ad's the way to go because instead of sifting through 1,000 people, you're gonna hit 1,000 people that night, you know? And it'll have a lower rate, but all you have to do is give them money instead of going through the work. So
Yeah, you're not spinning your wheels either. you
right,
know,
and it's just, you know, it's an easier sell because you can be like, you know, our average conversion rate is X, so I know I got to spend this amount of money to hit this goal, right? That's easy. One person can do that, and I think that's what their business model is. I'm not too familiar with the company, but I know a lot of the bigger companies. That's what they do. Terrakeet's another good one. They do SEO, search engine optimization.
That's their main thing.
Yep. They go out and they get other sites to link to their clients' websites, and that's it. You know,
And that's just all like back end, like
that's
tinkering with like meta tags and stuff.
yeah. So there's like on page and off page. They do a lot of on page stuff. From I think I don't really know the inner workings of their company but from what I do know is they have like a database of all the blogs and stuff that are out there, and their page rank score is what it's called, and they hit these high scoring sites, and they get these high scoring sites to write a blog post about their client, and then because Google says, hey, this person has this high value, and now they're linking to this site now has a higher value, right? And they get 4 or 5 of these backlinks from these high value pages to link to this one site. Well, now this one site becomes of higher value because of the Eigenvector centrality theorem, which is what we were talking about earlier, right? And then when somebody searches for restaurants, right? Restaurants in Syracuse, now they're higher than somebody else. So that's kind of what they do. When you search for, I think Wayfair was one of their customers.
Furniture company.
Or not
Or no.
Wayfair. What was it? Who does the glasses?
Ray-Ban.
Not Ray-Ban.
Warby Parker.
Warby Parker.
Yeah.
Warby Parker was one of their clients.
They do
They do-
sunglasses.
Yeah, they just do glasses and sunglasses.
I think custom framing designer glasses, you can get cheap mail order.
Yeah. So when you type in sunglasses, there's a thousands
Sure.
of sunglass companies, but they're going to come up before all of them because of the great job that they did, you know, and continue to do. I don't know if they're still a client, but I know that that was one of their clients a while back. But that's more of like a you know, larger company with more to spend on marketing, and they need better results, right?
So
Whereas like a local mom and pop, you know, restaurant doesn't really need that, but you can use different techniques to get better results than something that's more expensive even. So that's what I'm trying to do, and it's working out very well. And you know, I'm giving all the data and analytics from that. So it's, you know, as I grow the company that I have, you know, I can go, hey, you know, here are some results from this one thing that I did. This is what works. This is what doesn't. And then, you know, as I take employees on, and I can go, hey guys, like, this is what I learned. This is how I learned it. Let me pass that down to you. And this is how we're doing it today, and that might change later, but. this
Is that what you
works.
want to do? Like, have that type of firm, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple different irons in the fire. That's one of them. I think I have a unique specialty in finding unique ways to do things based on like rules and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it works, so why not, right? People pay for it, and it's you know, I've got a great asset in Syracuse University being right there. You know, you've got people in Newhouse and journalism and marketing and all that stuff willing to you know, get their feet wet and stuff like that.
So your Newhouse, like journalism, like what's your take on the state of journalism generally these days?
Journalism generally.
You know, like in your lifetime, you went from having you know, 2 newspapers a day. Back in the day, you'd have the Herald Journal and the Post Standard, right? Those
Yeah.
you'd have one delivered in the morning and one in the afternoon, and then you'd have the Sunday paper, right? Inundated with newspapers, and then. So my grandmother's a great example, right? Because she outlived, you know, like she died this past year at 104, but you know, she lived to read the paper, and then the paper just stopped coming, and she didn't transition to any kind of a computer or a tablet, so she was just kind of, you know, at the mercy of like the 1 or 2 papers a week. I think they did it on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
I mean, this is to say nothing of the quality of the journalism, but just the dissemination of like news generally.
Where do you think news is going? I mean, you got to look where the money is, right? Because that's generally where it's going to flow. So you have what's generating a lot of money right now is eyeballs. How do you get eyeballs? You say ridiculous shit.
Yeah.
You know?
I worked in news 10 years ago, and I'm no longer in news because it's not a viable business anymore like that, you know. At the time that I was out, everybody was already talking about being dead, and then, you know, firsthand was watching, you know, the legitimacy of it go out the door and being replaced with pseudo marketing, you know. And you've seen it. I've seen it in a variety. I heard it on NPR, you know, and then you see it across the board in all the other mainstream outlets, you know.
Well, you lose the local.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, because it becomes syndicated. You know, they get talking remarks that come in from whoever, and then that just gets regurgitated from one market to the next market.
So, and that's kind of, so my question is, how do we, you know, kind of refine and distill this process into like a palatable size that we can, you know, disseminate things like daily, right? Like I really want to kind of perfect this in a way. I mean, you know, like I love the long format because it just allows people to, get it all out, right?
Mhm.
Like, and sometimes the individual is like thinking it through themselves. Like you can't, in a long format, you can't be taken out of context. Like if you can't say what you're thinking in 2 or 3 hours, then
Sure.
more than likely you gotta like check yourself, and kind of like think about whether or not you even have something of value to say. But there's a lot of important things happening locally that are just ignored because of like syndicated news, So how do we get that back? Because we have the infrastructure at our disposal.
Well, I think it's a constant ebb and flow. Like, I think when social media came in, that was the initial idea, was people were gonna get information out, and then it becomes co-opted by the marketing.
And co-opted by the marketing and the banality of like sharing like too much of
Right,
just
right,
like
sure,
these
sure.
like insanely banal details of daily life.
And I think we're just gonna constantly see where media's just gonna be reinvented every 3-4 years in a way to try to find that sweet spot where we're getting the information, or where because just like music, in the 90s, where like somebody indie would come in, and then the labels would come in and totally like redesign them into something that's completely marketed. Now you're seeing that in news, you're seeing it in food, you're seeing it in everything, So like going back, I think it's just, we're gonna have to it's gonna be a constant ebb and flow of reinventing it, like crypto's a good example, when, Bitcoin was the answer, and then Bitcoin wasn't the answer, so Ethereum was the answer, and then, well, maybe Ethereum's not the answer, all these tokens are, and when these, run to the end of their usefulness, something else will come in and take their place,
Yeah, I think you'll get what you want to subscribe to, right? So, this is the type of news that you want to hear. You want to hear, the war news. There's going to be a war-specific news channel, and that's all they do. And there's going to be a politics, news channel. That's all they do, right? And then you're going to have all those specific channels. Hopefully, there's going to be some like fact checking and all that stuff going on. It's not going to go off the rails, right? But as it's going right now, it's like you have these marketing companies which are paying the news channels to get eyeballs, right? And that's what they're doing is they'll just say whatever just to get the eyeballs. They'll get the eyeballs, they'll get the money, and they don't really care. They got their money.
Right, for sure. And what I'm more interested in is just, again, taking it back to the local, like if there's a war channel where you get war news from, news about war all over the country, or, not war, but like, let's just say violence, right? Because we love violence, and
You get your crime news,
and
right?
you get like a really lopsided perspective of what the totality of the country is by watching a preponderance of stories about violence, when in reality, a very small amount of that violence is actually happening in your local, So I just think there's a healthy benefit to focusing on what's happening within like a certain radius, keeping it small,
Yeah, just doing hyper-local stuff, right?
Well,
So,
hyper-local stuff.
I think it goes back to decentralized communication, because you have political factions on both sides that are constantly trying to put their thumb on the scale in the conversation, whichever way that they
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
And the only way to get the information out is to be able to bypass them,
yeah, well, I mean, it used to be you had to report on both sides, the Fairness Act, right?
Mhm.
FCC, the Fairness Doctrine, I think. That went away, and then there was the right and the left news,
Yeah,
and news
now-
took off, and now they're off their separate, sides.
And whether you're
Separate
left or
echo
right,
chambers.
they're clearly reporting for whoever is paying their payroll at the end of the week,
Right. So I think as far as like news goes, you can kind of see it as like the streaming services. First you started with cable, you had cable, which was everything. And now you're getting these specialized services. You know, you get the Syracuse.com, which is your local, you know, that's your Disney Plus. You know, you get, you know, Wall Street Journal, you know, that's your NPR, you know, stuff like that. Hopefully, as far as like, you know, these journalists and journalism, what it goes towards is there's just going to be these channels that you subscribe to that you know are good for that specific piece of content, and you're going to only subscribe to the ones that you believe in, and you're not going to get the rest that comes with it. You know, you watch Fox News, there's, you know, some conservative stuff that's interesting, and you know, they make very good points and valid, and then you have CNN, which they also shove a lot of other stuff in there that you don't want to hear about, you know, from both sides. And I think it'll just be because our time is so precious and how we spend it, it's going to be super siloed in what you're going to be subscribing to.
What's really frustrating is these companies will construct a narrative throughout the day for whichever their agenda is. And
Right.
so one story will lead into the next story that just reinforces the narrative that they're trying to sell that day, you know?
Right.
You know, do we want to defund the police today? Or, you know, is violence so high that we need more police, you know, and you see them go either way and things like that, you know?
Yeah.
And that's, again, like, I think the answer, the solution, or like a tonic to that is to be the man on the street. Like, you could be down in the Armory with a camera and a microphone, and you can interview scores of people, including the police down there, right?
Yeah.
Now you're just getting this like individual, personal, intimate perspective, boots on the ground in your locality. That's a meaningful content, in my view.
Was it a couple years ago? I started a company with a guy. So he started this thing called Packet TV, which was, you know, the displays in the airports, and you'd have a box and you'd set it up and it'd just run through a slideshow, and you could put your specific content on that.
Mhm.
So he started that company. At the same time, we started this thing called Newspeep, which was a local news app. You know, you'd get tips and stuff that would come in, and it would be, you know, you could go film it and do a story on your phone, and you'd be in the area, or, you know, there's a robbery or whatever, go film it, you know, and you could
Yeah.
upload the content. I think that's where it's going.
I love that.
Just like like the hyper local, almost like the Uber for news type deal.
So, well, I think I mentioned this when I met you. Originally, and I still intend to do this, I've been calling them crypto ethnographies, but let's just say just ethnographies in general, right? I don't care who it is, but I'm just put a microphone in front of them and just let them get it out. Like, there's the news.
Yeah.
That from, you know, that's what I think. I want to make that efficient, and then I want to be able to disseminate that content in a way that is going to reach people, right? It's going to create an appetite for that, and then just keep doing it, right? But keep it pure. Don't change anything, you know. Don't try to have an agenda. You know, no prompting. You know, no narrative building
Right.
or fortification. You know, just like this, like a pure aggregate of opinion. You know,
Like, hey, this is what makes me run, and
across
this is
the
why.
board.
You
You
know,
know,
and you could see if that works for you, or
I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to take you to task. I'm not going to
Yeah.
try to change your mind. You know, because everybody knows everything anyway, right?
yeah, or, you know, they can look it up. You know. So, I listened to NPR in the morning when I was driving into work, which unfortunately COVID kind of cut that short. I used to like listen to NPR in the morning. How I ever do. You know, they'd have a segment where you could call in and, you know, voice your opinion on something, and, you know, a lot of the times I was like, you know, I figured I was, you know, very set on my opinion towards this one thing, and then somebody would call in and offer some other, you know, opinionated fact or opinion like towards the other way, and it's like, wow, I never thought of that, you know.
So, in another dimension to this, and the thing that I think will give it longevity, is to make people aren't going to care in a real way for a long time unless you give them a stake, you know. And I started having this conversation with my buddy Dan, the geology professor, about like how do we create like so John, right? Like John is back from LA, you know, he's doing logistics, driving, you know, he doesn't have time to do this in a meaningful way, right? So how do we take this physical environment, this building, right? And how do we structure the ownership of this building so that everybody involved has a piece? As a co-op or, you know, an S corp, or however it plays out, right?
Skin in the game.
It's for the lawyers, but
Yeah.
so that everybody, when they show up, knows that they have there's an egalitarian structure, that their work is going toward, you know, their ownership and their stake. So that's what I want to do, right? Because this place it's just not. And I want to have a fundraising round where we generate the revenue to like completely like restore the building, you know, have X number of stakeholders, everybody gets an office, everybody has a role, and then I mean there's a huge antenna on top of this building, right? It's like built for the exchange of information. And I just want to get there, and I know that the best things happen in groups. I know a lot of really smart people, but I also know that a lot of them, like take my buddy Dan, the geology professor. He's an adjunct professor. He's brilliant, but he's getting paid like nothing, and his workload is tremendous, you know, and just so he's kind of starting to. I mean, he's kind of like unsinkable, but at the same time, and like he should be a tenured professor by now. I mean, if he should have at least been tenure track, but you know, he's just a cash cow for the university. You know,
Yeah.
He's generating like a lot of sufficient dollar revenue for you know, a school with $1 billion endowment.
Yeah, I mean, just giving people a voice, you know. There's a good Instagram page, People in New York, right? That's all the guy does. He goes around everyone. It's like, tell me your story real
Dude,
quick.
it's that simple.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I'm saying.
People
you
want to
know?
get their story out.
But I want to keep the core stakeholders interested in perpetuity, and the only way to do that is to give them, you know, a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to work for the man, you know, like, you know, no matter.
Decentralize it a little bit.
For sure, yeah. I mean, without a doubt. So think about how to structure that.
We'll clone we'll clone Litecoin and we'll start our own.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen. There.
News coin.
Yeah.
I got one written down over here.
Why not? Right? Oh, the raccoon coin.
Yeah, Bitcoin, supple Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Supple Bitcoin. It's a play on Bitcoin supply. So you got a raccoon and he's holding he's got like a coin in his hand,
Yeah.
like a big shiny coin. He's all, you know, happy with his coin, you know. You do like one of these Doge things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not, right?
Yeah. I
At
mean,
least learn something along the way.
and that's it's almost like a fable, and you know, have you heard the story about the raccoon? How, if you want to catch a raccoon, you put a shiny object into a hole in a tree.
Yeah.
That's big enough so that they can fit their open
their
hand,
open, they
and
can't-
then when they make a fist, they can't pull it out, and they'll refuse to let go of it, right?
Yeah.
So, to the point where you come up and bludgeon them. And that's to a certain degree the hodler's mentality, right? Because they'll watch life-changing gains come and go, but they won't let go, you know, and take profit.
Yeah. GameStop, AMC,
Yeah. They're down,
stuff like that.
for sure. But yeah, that's where, like, I think that you could probably get amazing content at the restaurant.
Definitely.
You know, like what are
I sit there at the bar, and because there's a Marriott right across the street, I meet the coolest people.
yeah.
I met the owner of Heidelberg Bread
Mhm.
Company the other day.
Yeah.
He was
Where,
just
where
hanging out.
they're like, where are they? Out east somewhere?
Herkimer.
Herkimer.
Yeah. Amazing bread.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
swinging by
They've
New
been
York by
killing it
himself.
forever. Yeah.
And it was funny. So their logo, if you look at
Is
it,
that peasant or something, or a hooded monk? Is it?
it's this lady,
Lady.
and she's just like there. And so I was like, hey, so like being like a branding guy, I was like, what's your logo about? And he's like,
Yeah.
you know, I had this platter and this was the picture on it. He's an art collector, and he collects like German like steins and art and stuff like that. And he's like, I had this plate, and I really like the picture of this lady, and I have no idea who it is or where
No
it's from.
copyright or anything like
No idea. He's like, to this day, I have no idea what that is. And I was like, because we got talking about it, because like I vaguely knew the logo, but he gave me his business card, and I looked at it, and I was like, oh, like tell me the story behind this. You know, make it small talk, and it'd be a cool thing to learn. He's like, I have no idea, and I was like, interesting. Okay, give me like 5 seconds. So I took a picture with it on my iPhone, cropped it, threw it in tinyeye.com, which is a reverse image search, found the exact piece of art, linked it back to the artist. I'm like, is this it? And he's like, holy shit, I've been with, like, the entire time of this company, never knew.
that. Yeah.
And then in 5 minutes, I was like, here you go. And that's like the power of the internet now.
So what was it? Just like something, was it?
So it was it came out of like a collection of paintings. The guy was an Italian painter,
Mhm.
and it made its way into an art collection in Germany, and then it was
Oh, shocking.
it was exactly, and it was distributed amongst a bunch of different mediums. One of them, you know, was that plate that he has.
Yeah.
So it was a copy of the painting onto this plate, and then that's how he got it.
So you just like bolstered his brand.
Yeah, and so like he's like, yeah, like now, like I just helped the CEO of this like major bread company like figure out where his logo came from, just chilling at the bar, like.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, because I knew it was like a figure, like an old. I don't know. I was thinking it was like, is it like a peasant woman?
Yeah, it's like
With like a babushka on her head or something like that, or
I think she had some like hat on or something like that. Yeah. But
And so, how long has he been baking bread?
what? It was like 40 years or something like that. I
Yeah.
want to say. Let's see.
He'd be an interesting guy to interview.
AMP is down 6% to 6 cents, which is awesome, because yesterday it was only 5 cents. So that means it was at 7 cents a little while ago, or more. All right, we're about to wrap up 3 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna shut her down.
Wait
All
a
right.
minute. Wait a minute. We gotta. No, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's just parsing this and getting, and this is something that, I mean, I know you got a ton on your plate, but, if you have any ideas, we just really need to ramp this thing up and start, getting, content out.
Sure.
You know, and not because like I'm thinking about monetizing the content, like clearly that's not, you
Yeah.
know,
Gonna build the network.
just to kind of start doing what I just described, right? With like this, these local ethnographies, and just trying to help the health of the, the local ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, from being there, being at the York and stuff, I just know a lot of different people from around town that would love to come.
And that's a medium of informational exchange in and of itself, right? Like, there's just not, especially the last 2 years, we've been cut off from that so much, just being out and,
Yeah.
and
It's like,
exchanging
hey, what's going on in Syracuse, This is like the
honest
this is
opinions.
behind the scenes, the pulse on the industry, not the industry, but the pulse on Syracuse.
Yeah, and the nuanced pulse.
Yeah.
We're